Hey folks, welcome into this section on Maya, and we're going to be building a Stormtrooper helmet in this section. We're going to go a little bit slow at the beginning and then really pick up speed. A couple of things I want to point out to you that were in the previous video. This area up here is called the shelf, and all the things we're going to be working with tool-wise are going to be up here. It's very complicated. There's a lot of stuff going on, so if you're working with curves, there's going to be here. If we're working with polys here, if we're sculpting, the tools are here. Rigging, animating, rendering, special effects, Arnold, Bitfrost. Don't worry about all those things right now. We're going to stick with poly modeling. So we're going to be working with polygons, and polygons are simple shapes. You see we've got spheres, we've got cubes, we've got cylinders, we've got cones, we've got torus, we've got planes, and we've got poly discs. We've also got a couple of other special ones we'll work with a little bit later. So you already learned about the tools over here. And just quickly, this is selection tool, this is a move tool, this is a rotate tool, and this is a scale tool. We'll get into the other tools a little bit later. And our view tool, so right now, we're in what we call an isometric view. So we're looking at things 3D. So I'm going to put a cube out here, and I'm going to choose the scale tool. And I could scale this in any direction, or I can grab it in the middle, and I can scale it in every direction. And you'll work that way a lot. Now, as far as being able to change your view, I'm on the Mac right now, so I'm going to hit the command button and left mouse. You see, lets me tumble this view, so I can look at this cube from any angle. And if I need to see the back of it, I can turn it all the way around. Okay. If I use the right mouse, command and right mouse, that gets me a marking menu, and so I can go to any of these selection items. We'll get into those a little bit later as well. And then if I use the command button and middle mouse, so you really do need a three-button mouse to do this. You can drag that object, the view of that object, around on the screen. You can put it where you want. And then you can, if you've got a wheel, you can scroll in and out and be able to see that object. If you hit the A button while you're in here, it will frame all. If you had multiple objects and had a big one and a small one, like there's a smaller one, I can choose F and it'll jump just to that one in the center. So if I choose this one and I hit F, it'll come back here. Okay, so that's simple things. A couple other things I want to point out to you. When you have an object selected, you see how many faces. And so this is a face, this is a face, this is a face. You have edges. This is an edge, this is an edge, this is an edge, this is an edge. Okay. And the intersection of those edges creates a thing called a vertex. And so we've got a vertex here, here, here. If I come over, I am looking at my channel box, and this little icon here is a channel box, and this is attribute editor. They both have similar information. The channel box has some more detailed information. So I'm going to work with the channel box right now. So if I select this item and come down here under inputs to polycube, because that's the name of this object, you can actually name it whatever you like. But we start off with width, height, and depth of 1. And then we've got our subdivisions. How many subdivisions do we have in here? And so I can change this number to 5. And now you see I've got multiple faces in here. If I select all of these at the same time and choose 5, then they all go to 5. Same thing with the cylinder. I've got my subdivision axis is 20, and I can drag and scroll and see I'm just moving my mouse back and forth, and I'm adding and subtracting subdivisions in there. I can do it with the height. I can set it to 5. I can set it to 50. I can make the cap B1, or I can make the cap B3. So you can see how that's changing the amount of geometry that's there. This is a pretty heavy model for what we're doing. It would be much smoother. So if you start going less, then it's not very smooth. You know, even if I go to, say, 12. If I go to 12, excuse me, it's smoother, but it's not smooth. If I was to render that, you would see those edges. So I'm back to a clean file here. I just deleted what we had and started a new file. And one of the things that we like to do is we like to keep everything together. Think about when you're doing any kind of work, you want to keep all the things that go with that project together. And that's the way that Maya is going to be the happiest. If you start doing file, save as, and just sticking your scenes, and that's what these are called, scenes, onto the desktop, it's going to have problems later being able to find the things that go along with that scene. And so what we're going to do is we're going to keep these things together in a thing called a project. So if I go up here to File and Project window, and I'm going to name this first one Helmet. And you can see that it's going to do the default locations for everything we work with. So scenes are going to be in a folder called Scenes. Images are going to be in Images. Source images are going to be in Source Images. And so you could change the names of these if you had a really good reason. I suggest that you don't, but you certainly could. Okay, once I do this, I'm going to click Accept. And, I've got to click New. Hang on one second here. And then Accept. And now I'll have, if I was to look at saving this, you see I'm in Helmet and Scenes. And you could see that if I looked at the Helmet folder that it just created, all these folders were just made for me. And so I definitely want to keep my scenes together in Scenes. And so I'm going to call this Helmet and do Save. And you get this nag screen that says this is student version for personal learning only. I tell it to continue. And so now we've got our file saved and we're really ready to start working. Before we start creating our helmet, I do want to show you the other view options. Over here on this side, we have the multi-view where we've got a top, a front, a side, and the isometric. And if we create an object, you see it in all the different views. And this is a good way to think about it. So you see I'm scaling this. We're actually scaling it in the X, and so I can slide that in and out, and you see it changing here. But with the side view, because we're looking at it on the end, it's not changing in that. And so when we do a scale, we'll always see it moving in two of the other views, and one view will stay the same. And so that's the ins and outs of working with different views. And it's going to be important for you to work in whichever view is the most important. If you've got a particular view active, like I just clicked on the top view, if I hit the space bar, that brings me full screen in the top view. And so I just created a cone, which just looks like a circle from the top view. and I'll move this over. I'm going to create a cylinder, and they look very similar from this top view. But if I go back to my isometric view, very different. So just bear in mind the side that we're looking at, front, top, side, or the isometric view, the 3D view, then we're going to see different things in those. And so I'm going to delete both of those. Hey, and we're ready to tear into this helmet and have some fun with it. So I think we're ready to go. We've got our helmet file saved. It's in our, check this out. It's in our scene in the right place. You can see that file is helmet in the project helmet and scenes. So we're good to go. First thing we're going to do is get you a couple more terms. In the other video, they talked about, the different axes. So Z, the way we're looking at it here, Z is in the depth, Y is in height, and X is in width. Of course, it doesn't take much changing of the way we're looking at it to where the height and width and depth don't exactly match up anymore. So always pay attention down here to the orientation that you're looking at it. Okay, so in the universe here, we call 0, 0, 0 the origin. And that's where we're going to work from, because it's very easy for us to determine how far we're going in one axis or another. So we're going to work from the origin. And one of the things we really need to do to make this helmet look right is to have a thing called a reference image. And I've provided these reference images for you. They're in the download for the helmet project. And you need to put them in the right folder. They should go in the source images folder inside your project. So I'm going to show you, here's our two images. So we've got the side view of our helmet and we've got the front view of our helmet. So that's where we're going with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my multi-view, and in the front view I'm going to place that as a reference image. So I'm going to go to View and Image Plane and Import Image. And notice it automatically goes to the Source Images folder. If you did not put your files in that Source Images folder, then you're going to have to go dig for them. So you really do want to put them in the correct place. It makes it easy. It makes it work just like mine's working now. So I'm going to do front is there. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the side view, image plane, import image, side. And so now I can look at this view and I can make my object the same size as our front view of this helmet. So it makes it really easy. This is never going to be part of our finished product. It's just here as a guide for us. One of the things that most people like to do, because this will be there if you're looking at the multi-view, at the isometric view, this will be there. And so you can't really see through it. And so what we can do is we can make this a little bit more transparent. And so we've got it selected here, and I'm going to change the alpha on this image plane shape 1 to 0.25. That seems to be a good number. If you come to this one, we can do the same thing here. Now while we're working, we'll be able to see through that. So I'm just going to put a cube here just for example to start with. And see, I can see all the way through, and my cube is still good. I'm going to delete the cube. So we're looking pretty good with our setup. And you'll be able to go through and use these reference images for a lot of your work. So if you've got a sketch of where you're wanting to go, or you've got, the image of the car that you're trying to model, you can put that in as a reference image, and then you've got all of your dimensions, rough dimensions anyways, and be able to work very easily from that. So I want to show you a couple of options. Sometimes these image planes can be hard to select. They're the only thing in our scene right now, and so it's really not a big deal at the moment. But if you got something complex going on, then it might be hard to choose things from there. And I think that you'll do yourself a lot of good if you learn how to always be able to go back to this tool called the Outliner. And if I go up to Windows and Outliner, you see here's our outliner, and we'll see everything that's part of our scene. So when we start creating objects, they'll all be here. But I can choose that image plane, I can choose this image plane, and it's very easy to select things. So I like the outliner a lot. And you can, if you've got a big screen, you can actually tear that off and put it over to the side and be able to work very easily from that. Okay. I want to show you another way that some modelers like to work. Some people don't like to work with this directly in their work area. So I'm just stick another cube out here. They don't like to have this to where they can see it dividing their work. They think it's a little cluttered. And here's an option for you. You don't have to work exactly like it's laid out. You can select this image plane, use the move tool, and you can push it all the way back here out of the way. And you can do the same thing here, push it all the way back out of the way. And so, it looks like it's not very helpful, but if I go back to my multi-view, nothing's really changed from the front view. It still looks exactly the same. So I could set it to be exactly what I want it to be. Okay. And since I've created this cube, the cube is at the origin. I'm going to select it. Let's go ahead and make it the right size. I'm going to get my channel box up and look at the inputs that go along with our cube. And I'm going to select all of these. And the size, yours may be a little different depending on how that yours comes in. And so we're going to create that at 14. And so mine ended up being a little bit big. And so that was my reference from the last computer I had. 14 was going to be right. And so 14 is not right with this computer. So let's just scale this down to where it's going to be about the right size. So we're about there. So yours is going to change. I know that 14 was the right size for the last computer that I had, and so it's not right now. So you can see that numbers are just numbers. They're just units. Now you can use a unit and call it millimeters or centimeters or inches. You can consider it whatever you want, but the number is only relevant to everything else in this scene, and it's not relevant to anything else. So like I said, 14 was the right number for me originally. And you know what? I'm going to Control Z this and undo and get back to where I was, and let's see what the correct size should be. So I'm going to select all of these just so you get an idea. I'm working off of a 13-inch MacBook Pro, and so 14 was not the right number. My last laptop that I did this project with was a 15-inch MacBook Pro with a Retina display. And so I wonder if we do it at 10. 10's still too big. So and again, yours is going to be different. Let's do it at 5. 5's close. Let's see what happens if I do it at 4. 4 is good. So I'm going to roll with 4. You do whatever size is going to work for you. So when I look at this from my side view is good. And my front view is good. Okay, I also want to change my subdivision height because we need some more geometry to work with. So I'm going to change that to 2 here to start with. So we're working with 1, 2, and 1 on our subdivisions for our cube. So you can see what that's going to look like. And now we're going to go ahead and smooth this. Make sure you're looking at the modeling menu set. If I click on mesh, I can do a smooth. We'll see what happens with it. Yeah, that's not what I want. So that's the default settings for smooth. So I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to go back and look at the options with smooth. Every one of these boxes with a menu item, that's called an option box. And I hope you're starting to see just how deep and wide that Maya can be. But we're going to go at it at a good pace here early, and so no one gets left behind. So if I select smooth with the option box, now I can choose exactly what I want for settings. And don't worry about you understanding the details of every one of these. We'll get into it a little bit later. So this first one, make sure that you're on exponentially. That's the default. It should be there. But division levels, let's set it to 2. And then we'll click smooth and see what happens. That is much more what I'm looking for. So you can see how that is very close to the overall shape of the helmet that we were working with. So let's get back here. And if I turn this around, we're already starting to look a little bit like a helmet. So if your number 2 should be good for you. If something with your computer is a little different, go ahead and experiment, and maybe it's 3. I'm going to guess not, but it might be. Just like I had to change, my original number that I had in my mind was 14 is the last time I'd done this project, and 14 was a long ways off on this one. So adjust to what you see. Don't expect universal truths as you go through and work with Maya. So next up, I hope you're already seeing a little bit of an issue. If I'm looking at this front view, I can't really see my reference image. And so I've got a lot of different ways I can view this. If I do shading, I can choose to look at this as a wireframe. And so there's just my wireframe view. I could choose wireframe on shaded. And so I see everything that's outside, but I've still got the shaded view. I can just do X-ray. So I get it as a little bit of a shade, but I can see through it. And some people find that to be the best way because they get the feeling that it's a little bit solid. Okay, so I will leave it right there. And if it's spacebar, it'll come back. And that is only per view. So the side view and perspective view are both still exactly the way they were. So I'm going to switch both of those to be X-ray. I'm going to leave the top view as smooth shaded. Now, one of the things that we've not talked about yet is how do you select things? Okay, I'm going to do this from this front view. Okay, we already talked about faces, edges, and vertices. Okay, if I right click, I hold down, I can choose vertex. You see how every vertex gets lit up, and I could move one vertex if I wanted to. I'm not going to right here because I don't want to take a chance on messing up my symmetry with these things, because we're going to do something special in just a second. But we are going to move these around. I could choose an edge, and you see how that lights up edges. Okay, that's an easy way to work. I can also choose faces, and there's faces. Don't worry about the rest of them yet. That's a little bit closer to the line in the pool. So we're a long ways from the deep end of the pool. So we're still, to tell you the truth, we're probably in the kiddie pool. So we're not even in the grown-up pool yet. So we're going to work with these faces, and I'm going to go back out, and believe it or not, most of the real models that you see, only half of them were created. Not that half the models were created, but only half of the design work was done, because things that are symmetrical, it makes no sense to do all the work on left side and right side. Just go ahead and make one side or the other, and then mirror it. And so that's what we're going to do here. So this is top view. What I want to do is I want to get rid of all the faces that are on this left side of the origin. And so the easiest thing to do is start dragging a box, and I can get right up close to that. And if I zoom in, oh, I got to make sure I've got faces selected. Okay. We've got all those. I'll hit delete on the keyboard. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Let's go back and hit that again. Okay, so faces. Got all those selected. Delete. Gosh, it keeps keeping that one. Let's see what's going on. Okay, Maya had changed the defaults with one of these items. This icon right here. Select object by type. So if I'm trying to select a group with faces, you see how it selects the whole thing. Okay, that's not what I'm looking for. The button beside of it changes from selecting by object to selecting by type. And so when you're selecting by type, you get those faces. And so we may run into a few more of these along the way for the semester. So once you've made that change, now we only get these selected. I can hit delete, and that deletes all those faces. And now when I look at this from, gosh, this should be the perspective view. Now we've got only the right half. And so when I look at it from the front view, that looks right. One thing I'm not really happy with is my scale here. And so I'm going to go back and choose object mode. Got my whole object selected, and I'm going to scale this down just a little, trying to get it to match. So it's pretty close in that direction. Let's look at it from the side view. And you know, that's not that bad. We're going to fix this back edge where that it's a little bit narrow. We're going to fix that next. So let's roll with it like it is. Okay, I'm going to get back to my front view. Now let's keep working. Now to create our helmet, the finished product, we don't need this lower section. We're going to do that with another technique. So basically, I'm going to work from the side view here, and I'm going to get rid of some things. So when I look at the faces, the corner of the visor right there, I'm going to keep this upper part, and I'm going to get rid of everything below it. I could go in, select faces, and I'm doing shift select right now. I could do that, hit delete, and that would be fine to get rid of those faces. I'm going to Control Z that and bring them back. I'm going to introduce a new tool that you may not use it a lot in the beginning, but you will have seen it, and it's a nice tool to use later, and that is the Paint Select tool. Okay. With the Paint Select tool, I can go through and just click as I go, and the big red circle is my area of influence, and you can actually adjust that with the B key and then drag with middle mouse, so you can make it larger or smaller. But I'm pretty good with the selection here. So again, B key, hold down B, middle mouse, drag left to right, and it'll adjust that. And so now we've got, I like that a lot. That's exactly where we want to be with the upper part of our helmet. The lower part we're going to make as a separate piece through a different technique. One thing that's going to hurt us a little bit later, if you notice, our edges are not perfectly horizontal and vertical. And they don't have to be perfect, but they need to be a little bit straighter than where we're at to get the kind of effect we want later. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to switch over to my other view. And this is an easier way to see where it's at. And up here in my toolbar, depending on how much screen size you've got, you may have some of these minimized. And you see how there's a little arrow that's on the line here? If I bump that out, then you get all these items. So you can arrange this to where you can see better. And this is what I'm looking for. And so this first one says snap to grid. The next one is snap to curves. The next one, snap to points. The next one is snap to projected center. Then we've got snap to view planes. And the last one is make the selected object live. Now, only one we're going to worry about right now is snap to grid. And so what we can do is set this up to where we move this and it will jump to that grid. Here's the problem. Because the scale that we're working with right now, our grid is way too big for me to be able to snap to anything. So what I'm going to do with this object selected, let me get back to object mode. I just right clicked to get there. Okay, got my object selected, and you see the scale on it is 0.847. Okay, so I'm going to make a mental note of 0.847. I want to use my scale tool, and I want to blow this up really big. Something like that. Okay. Now I can go in and choose edge, and I'm going to click this and turn it on to where that you see how I move that and it snaps to that line. And I can select multiple edges. So I can select that one and this one, and they'll both jump to that. They'll both jump to the grid right there. Okay. Oh, go back, and I'm just going to select just one this time, just that one, and get this one, move it up, and then I'll choose this one. Oh. Sometimes you have to click away to get the arrows out of the way. See, my grid's still too big. So I'm going to undo that last move, and I'm going to go back and get object mode again. I'm going to scale this up even more because I want to keep this to where I can snap it to the grid. And so, oh, I got face by accident. I want edge. So I'm going to, oh, definitely undo that. I'm still on my scale tool. Got to be with move tool. There we go. And, sometimes you have to move it down and then back up. So if I'm working on something like this, then what I'll try to do is move one piece and be ready to undo on a whole bunch of these, just in case you make a mistake. And sometimes you have to move them both up to be able to get them straightened out. There we go. That looks pretty good. two things that I did here that I want to fix. You see, I got that one off of the line. If I was to mirror this in just a minute, I would have a gap right here. And so I'm going to go back and choose vertex. I've got my move tool selected. Select that vertex. And I want to get it back on that particular grid line. Okay. And believe it or not, that's not terrible. Not terrible. So let's go ahead and get these last couple of vertices straightened up here. Okay. Get this one. Yeah, I'm liking that. Okay. And remember, we adjusted the size of this. And so we need to go back to object mode. Okay, remember when we started adjusting this, the only thing I don't like is where that spot is right there. So I'm going to get back to, vertex and with that selected. And my move tool. I did turn off the snap to grid, so I'm able to drag that around freely, and I'm just trying to clean up that that edge right there. So everything else I am relatively happy with. Okay. So we scaled this up so that we could use the grid more efficiently. Okay, let's look back. Look how big we are compared to where we were at. But if you remember, let me get back to object mode. If you remember when we scaled this, we just drug it up to match up with our grid. And our original size on here was 0.847. And all of a sudden, we're back exactly right again. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. There may be a few little things that are bumped out, and we'll clean those up as we go. Now, we need to be able to do some more fun things. I know that this has been interesting just getting things set up, but we need to do some things that are going to make this look really nice. And so what we're going to do is switch back to our side view to start with, and we're going to get our object to match up with all of this. And so I'm going to get back to our vertices here, and I'm going to grab, just this first row. We're going to add some geometry later. Okay, so I've got my move tool. I've got that whole row, and I hope you noticed that I didn't just go through and select the vertices, because there's another vertice that's in behind this one, and you might get it and you might not get it. And so anytime you're working this way, you want to drag a box around all of those, and that way you're for sure going to get everything. Okay, so I'm going to drag that down, and then I'm going to go ahead and select these, and I'll drag them back up, and then I'll select these and drag them back up, and then I'll select these and drag it back up, and then I'm going to zoom in here pretty close on this last one. And see, I'm just using command and middle mouse to get this one, and I'm going to move it out, I'm going to move it up, and then select these, and I'm going to move them down just a little, Actually, I'm going to add some more geometry in a minute. So let me undo that one. Okay, I'll just work with just this last one to get out to here. We're going to add some more geometry in here so that we can make this shape the way we want it. Okay, and now let's work with 2 vertices at a time to get this shape. A couple of places we may work with 3. Gotta get vertex mode. Get both those selected. Drag that last one in to about there. Get both of these, and we'll move them in and down as well. Go ahead and get this one while we're here, and I'll move it in just a little bit. And now then we can select all of those. Move it down and in. Okay. We'll work our way around the top. I'll select all of those, move them down, select all of these. That one doesn't have to go very far. These need to come back in just a bit. These also need to come in just a bit, and these I'm going to move up and in, maybe up just a little bit more. Okay, and then with these, first thing I want to do is choose to rotate them to about the same angle, and then I'll move them up. That's close. A little bit more. Okay. And up just a little bit more. Maybe one more rotate. Okay. And up one more time, and then I'm going to grab just these out here, move them in, down just a little. Not too shabby. Okay, so that's looking good. I'm going to turn around and do the front as well. May not be a whole lot of work to do on the front. It is just a little bit outside here. And this is one of these cases where you've got to be really careful about the parts you're grabbing, because you don't want to be moving stuff that's on the back side of this. So a lot of times I'll look at it from this top view and get the vertices selected from the top or from this view, from the isometric view. So if I'm only wanting to work with just the vertices that are out here, I'll look at it from the top, select just these, maybe just these to start with. I missed a couple. Let's hit that again. So maybe just those, and then I'll switch back. Oh, I just turned them off. Let's do it this way. Let's grab them right here. And then let's go back and look and double check that I don't have anything else selected on the back. Nope, we're good. I got lucky. So I'm going to slide these in to about there. And you can match these up, you know, as you go, you know, as close as you're wanting to move them. So I'm going to move those all in just a little bit, and I think we're good. So I think we're probably going to have a few little bumped out things. And here's the easiest way to tell. If we get back to our perspective view, and I'm going to go up to shading and turn, oh, we're already smooth shade. So we're good. We can see what's going on here. Oh, maybe if I turn off the X-ray on it. There we go. Let's get back to object mode. Now we can see where there's some issues, and you know, that may be a little high right in here. Nothing big. So relatively pleased at the moment. Maybe a little out right here, but we'll work on that. So this is the end of the helmet part A. So we're going to do this in 3 parts. So this is part A, and we'll pick up with part B. If you want to go back and do this a couple of times, that's a great idea. Just to review, we talked about the interface. We talked about the channel box, okay, and how you've got settings over here for the where your object is at and the amount of geometry that's in here. We talked about the marking menu, so using the right mouse button to be able to choose an edge or a face or a vertex or get back to object mode. We talked about looking at different views. We talked about reference images. We did so much. You know, what are we at? Maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes. We covered a lot of ground, and you're going to have to practice this a lot before you feel good with it. But in no time, you'll be able to knock out a helmet like this in 5 minutes on your own. Last thing we're going to do is we want to get a base save here of this. So I'm going to do save scene as, and this one I'm going to save it as helmet KH1, and each step we go through section wise, we're going to save it with a different number, because you never know when we're going to find something we messed up on at this point, and if we do a bunch of other things, maybe we can't get back to this point, and so you'd hate to have to scrap it and start over. Okay, so we'll have incremental saves along the way. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you had fun with it. If you got questions, feel free to email me, and I'll be more than happy to help do some troubleshooting or help you over the hard part. I tried to go slow so that everybody is good with where we're at. Okay. If you got questions, don't be afraid to ask, and we'll pick up with section B, which will get the lower part of this, and then we'll mirror everything over next time. So have fun, and we'll talk to you later.